Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our producer, Jeff Durall. We're at High Plains Mental Health Center in Hayes. Joining us is the Manager of Community Education and Outreach, Ken Loos, as we talk again about the holidays. And let's begin with just some general thoughts on the holidays. Would you, Ken?
You bet. You know, the holidays are something that I think we know they're supposed to be times of celebration, times of fun and family, and really focusing on what the whole point of this season truly is. And yet, as Americans, I think we make ourselves a little bit overstressed. I think we sometimes our expectations are very unrealistic. People suddenly don't seem to need as much sleep. They don't quite take care of themselves as well. And that can lead to some, maybe not holiday catastrophes, but some holiday frustrations, certainly. And so I think it's that time of the year to really remember to keep that balance. Financially, there's a balance when it comes to just what we can do physically and mentally. Keeping in mind that word no is there for a reason. Sometimes we feel guilty about it, but just know your own personal boundaries and limits. And then finally, maybe being a little bit patient with yourself. If you've gone through a loss, if a loved one is no longer with you, or just maybe some other significant changes over the course of the year, that the first holidays without someone you care about, or after a divorce, after a separation, might be a little bit tough.
I think there's some points there that you've outlined from Jeff Durall's menu planner, I think.
That's probably true. Yes, I think you're right.
Let's talk about some of those holiday expectations. You know, we have a pretty high bar sometimes that we set.
We do. We set a bar. You know, families are complicated, and we have people in our families that there are things we love about them, things we don't love so much about them. And you know, at the holidays, sometimes people get into this mode, everything has to be perfect. You know, not just the meal, but the children are going to be perfectly behaved, and you know, everyone is just, all the adults are going to be at their best behavior. And if you kind of quarrel with someone 11 months out of the year, there's probably a good shot you're going to quarrel around the holiday season as well. So that's one of those things where I think sometimes our expectations, not only that we set ourselves up for failure, but we lose perspective with it. And so if something's just not quite as perfect as we want, you know, it becomes this catastrophe, this horrible event, meltdowns, people are crying and upset. Let's set realistic expectations. You know, let's just do the best we can. That would be a good step.
And boy, that can come in a lot of areas too, can't it? From dealing interpersonal relationships, even the gift purchases, the financial involved, the planning. All of this takes place with high expectations, but again, you have to be realistic, don't you?
You have to be realistic. And you know, sometimes, certainly there are people in my family, they're not the greatest gift givers, and we just kind of assume that that's a skill that comes naturally. Some people are not very good at that, and that shouldn't surprise us. I mean, it's one of those things that we all have strengths and weaknesses, and so when it comes to some of these events, I think a lot of our expectations, we're not speaking, we're not putting it out there on the table. And so we're just assuming everyone's going to know exactly what I want, everyone's going to, you know, fall in line. And then when that doesn't happen, there can be a lot of hurt and anger, but the folks on the other side didn't even realize what it is that they were supposed to do, should have done, what have you.
Boy, it goes back to a central theme that you've told us about over the years, Ken, and that's strictly communication.
Communication. You know, in therapy, we remind folks all the time we're not mind readers. And so if you come in and you tell us everything is just going perfectly well, we're likely to believe that because we want to trust our clients and we want to work with them. So it's really important to put some things out, you know, out in front, and to be able to say, maybe I'm not up for this big of a party this year. You know, it's been a rough year maybe at work. It's financially been kind of a tough year. What can we do to kind of downsize a little bit? Not ruin the holidays, not totally ignore them, but just to kind of downsize, make it a little bit more enjoyable for everybody as opposed to a group within a family really, really stressing and getting to a point that they're just glad the holidays are over. They're ready to go back to work. I think we're missing something when that happens.
If that's the case, then you've probably gone too far.
You've probably gone too far. And I don't know who first pointed this out, but I read somewhere where an individual said, you know, we used to talk about how was your Christmas, how were your holidays, did you enjoy them, did you have fun? Now we ask, did you survive them, like it's some horrific ordeal? And we do. As a society, that's kind of the question now. We all do that maybe without thinking, but it also might reflect a truth to it, that it's become more of a chore rather than a celebration, and that's a concern.
Turning to a more serious topic, and that's dealing with loss and perhaps individuals who are by themselves during the holidays, whether it's through a divorce or a death or something like that. This is a tough time, especially if it's the first or maybe the second experience with the holidays and the loss.
You bet. This is a very tough time of year. If there was a particular relative, a friend, a spouse, the first year of those holidays, when everything is new, there's an empty place at the table. There's just certain things that individual brought to the family traditions, and they're gone. The bottom line being that one, again, is communication. If you're the one in this position, alone because you're not around family or because you've had some kind of a loss in your life, what kinds of things are you maybe up to and what are you not up to, and sharing that. Ironically, some individuals who are grieving, maybe hurting a little bit, they will go to bigger get-togethers rather than smaller ones, because in bigger get-togethers, they can leave when they're ready. It's not a big deal. It's not a big production. If it's a small, intimate gathering, it's harder to say, I want to leave. So what are you up to in terms of your abilities, your interactions? Maybe one thing to do is to look to start a new tradition. If there's a loved one that's missing, maybe lighting a special candle for that person. Maybe sharing some funny stories, humorous stories, so that people in the midst of their grief can also laugh a little bit and enjoy the blessing of knowing that person. Maybe it's volunteering in your community or for your church, finding someone else that you can do something for. A lot of times we feel better as human beings when we can help others and we're hurting. It's just one of those things that to give is, in a sense, better than to receive. And so that might be something to consider. But I do think we come back, Mike, as you mentioned, being just a little bit patient with ourselves and with others, because this isn't just, you can't just assume everybody's happy and joyous. Some people really do struggle, and there's a reason for that.
But you would generally counsel someone who is experiencing a loss, maybe for the first holiday season around this time of the year, to not turn inward then necessarily.
Yeah, like with everything, there's a balance. I think some people need to have a little bit of inward time. They maybe need some private, quiet time. We also, if we're going through grief, we don't want to ruin other people's joy. We don't want to ruin other people's good time. But I think you're absolutely right that if the isolation becomes total, that depression, potentially, that grief is going to intensify. Mm-hmm. So what can you do? Again, don't try to do everything. Don't try. It's not an all or none thing. Sometimes I think as Americans we're stuck from 0 to 60. There's a lot of things we can do in between, and it's one of those things here. You don't have to do 20 get-togethers during the holiday season, but maybe you're up for 2 or 3. Maybe going to a special church service is something you're up to. Maybe just, even calling a friend and saying, would you go to a movie with me? Just where the pressure is off the conversation, but you can do something with another individual while you're being entertained, and then have a cup of coffee afterwards or something like that.
Yeah, you touched on this. From the other side then, those of us who would like to interact with people that we know are experiencing loss and loneliness and such, sometimes we back away because we don't know how to interact or how to deal with the situation.
That's exactly right. People have big hearts. They want to help. Sometimes they're afraid if they say the wrong thing, they're just going to make the person feel worse. They're going to make the person depressed. You know, I think it's much better to reach out, even if you say to someone, look, I really don't know what to say, but I'm kind of worried about you. I'm thinking about you. I'm going to Zoom to Dillon's or Walmart and going to buy some things. Why don't you come with me? Or we were thinking of having this little get-together. We would love it for you to join us. You know, I think that's better than when somebody stays silent for fear of making a situation worse, because that silence can feel like, you know, there really is nobody out there that's even reaching out to me. So be specific in terms of your reaching out. We're doing this particular thing. Come join us if you would.
But even if they say no, don't give up on that particular invitation, if you will.
Don't give up on that invitation. Or the theme of, you know, we've missed you at church. How about next Sunday if I swing around and pick you up? You know, something very specific. They still may say no, but by leaving the door open, especially when we think about people who are going through depression, by leaving the door open, there's that hope that when they are ready to reach out, when they do want to reach out, they know an individual or several individuals that they can make that connection with.
Ken, let's spend a couple of minutes on New Year's resolutions if we could.
Sure.
Because I got to thinking, New Year's resolutions, if we make them and break them, maybe we don't feel so good. If we make them and achieve the goal, regardless of what that New Year's resolution is, then we feel pretty good about ourselves. So where do you come down on New Year's resolutions?
You know, yeah, I think that's part of surviving the holidays. It's this joke, yeah, I set my resolution and it's, you know, January 3rd and yeah, whatever, you know, it's over with. You're absolutely right, Mike. The general issue is when we set goals, when we accomplish those goals, we feel better. That's part of being part of human nature again. I think what a lot of us, we make the mistake of setting really lofty goals, again, unrealistic expectations. If you've never exercised, if that's not your thing, and now your goal is to exercise 6 days a week, you've set yourself up for failure. It's not going to happen. Let's just start right off the bat. So setting up realistic, measurable, doable goals. So there's an example, again, taking exercise, since it's a common one. If you really don't exercise, all right, I am going to try to walk 30 minutes every other day to start, or something like that, something that's measurable. If you have to do it every day, it can start to feel like a chore. It can start to feel like one more obligation. We're tired. We're already stressed as people. We tend to put that off. But if it's something that we really are trying to better ourselves with, and we can start to make progress, there is that sense of accomplishment. And when you can look back and go, well, shoot, that wasn't as bad as I thought, you know, and then we're hoping it becomes a new routine. I mean, that's what we're talking, whether it's eating healthier meals, getting exercise, not smoking, whatever it is, whatever goal you set, reaching out and making some new connections or friends, making it small enough that you can see that measurable result should be reinforcing in itself.
Ken, over the years we've known the importance of High Plains Mental Health Center throughout northwest Kansas and the 20 counties that you've been serving.
Yeah.
And now the budget cuts that are coming, that have come previously, where you've already made cuts and reductions in services. Where are we impacted now? We need to know how these budget cuts are affecting services.
You know, it is really important. We served approximately 5,300 people last calendar year. And when we talk about serving 5,300, that's roughly that we have impacted the lives directly of 1 out of 20 people living in northwest Kansas. But we also know that there's a ripple effect. So when we provide services to a young child maybe who's disrupting a classroom, well, if that child gets help, you've also made a positive impact for 10, 15, 20 additional children. When we impact the lives of a family member, you know, there's an improvement in that family's interaction and hopefully their outcome. I've been with High Plains 21 years, Mike. At the peak of our number of employees, we had over 200 in our 20 counties. We now, if we count PRN respite workers, we're at about 140. You know, and this isn't just a one-year cut, of course, it's over years. You're right, we used to provide a number of services that we can no longer provide. And there's just some uncertainty, not just with state funding, but when extra pressure is put financially on our 20 counties, and if they cut back on our funding, we in a sense get hit twice. And so I don't have any specifics for you, but I know it's something our administration is very concerned about. The last thing that you want to do is cut services or anything of that nature. But at some point, you can only do so much for efficiency. At some point, you do reach a situation where it's tough to do everything you're asked to do.
Ken Loos, the manager of community education and outreach at High Plains Mental Health Center in Hayes. And you can find out further information with a call or contact to High Plains Mental Health Center. Ken Loos, our Community Connection. Thanks for watching.